Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Magical podcast. This episode is for the Pisces full moon, which is on the 13th or 14th of September, dependent where you are, and we'll look more at that in detail. But first of all, we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves. Jen, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Duchenne. I'm an Akashic healer and guide, numerologist, soul mentor, creator of the Illuminating Journey cards. And I help my clients break through limitations to activate their soul's desire and have a delightful time living an embodied life.
Cool. Well, I'm Louise Eddington. I'm a soul astrologer, writer, and shamanic healer, and I help my clients to regain connection and alignment so they can live in self-awareness and self-acceptance. And before I dive into the full moon chart, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you follow us on iTunes, we love reviews, please, with the Magical Podcast on iTunes. This podcast is going down really well, and the more reviews, the better, the more it gets seen. So please do that. Also, we do take questions. We haven't got any for this episode, but if you have any burning questions, we will feature them on air, one per episode. If it's a more personal question, we will not be giving out personal details. So don't be afraid to ask anything you want to know. And the email address is weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com. Lastly, we also have a Patreon. It's Weirdly Magical on Patreon. For $3 a month, we'll be introducing Patreon-only content at some point when we get enough patrons. Okay, but that's if you just would like to support our podcast, because we do have, podcasting fees and things like that. But we just love doing it. For Jen and I, this is just like we used to get on the phone and talk about stuff like this. So we now do it on a podcast.
Yes.
So before we dive into the astrology chart, though, Jen and I have pulled a card each. So Jen, do you want to show your card first? We have a very big coincidence in the cards too.
Right. So this is the card that came up. It's the 10 and the Illuminating Journey cards. These cards were created with the influence of the Akashic Records, so it's actually interesting. They combine old and new aspects, or ancient and new. So this 10, for those of you who can't see, there's this island in the middle of this lake surrounded by these mountains, a woman in yellow at the top, and then you can see the sky full of stars, and there is a spaceship beaming down on this kind of ancient site that's full of stones. And in the front, there is a griffin and a beautiful stone with a sword in it. And there is also a cow. This is a female cow, of course. Cows are female, with big horns. It's a big horned cow, very sacred, and has is that a sun in it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what I feel when I look at this, the 10, of course, is pretty incredible. Just thinking about what we're talking about, the 10 is the 1 and the 0. These numbers are about bringing the divine code into the world. So the masculine and feminine, all our language begins with the 1 and the 0. Computer language, etc., binary language, energetic language. And also the idea of this is, to me, this idea of being at a portal, at a place of kind of reconnecting with what is ancient within us that is true, and releasing what feels or has been fake or not part of it. And just the deep waters, it just feels so still and so powerful. it's very much a card that speaks to the soul. I just was going to look what it said right here. Love merging into light. The fruit of the ancient world lives in the present moment. And I think that's it. It's an opportunity. And seeing the sword and the stone, it just always makes me think of the story of Merlin, right? It's like, or King Arthur. It's the right, when you are in the right of who you are and a soul connection, then you can easily take the sword out the stone. Otherwise, you might struggle to really express who you are and to become that which you are.
It does feel very Pisces full moony to me, the whole card, because of course Pisces is a water sign, and a full moon is an opposition between the moon in Pisces and the sun in Virgo, so that's very earthly with the rocks and the ground. But I always think of the Pisces Virgo opposition or axis in the astrology chart as being very much bringing the mysticism down to earth in a very practical way. So it's got that feel to it as well, I think.
Yes, well, the emphasis on all that kind of otherworldly, and yet it is kind of pointed at the worldly thing. What are you building? Where are you standing? What are you believing? So it's interesting because it's almost like when I look at that center island thing, it always feels like it's a graveyard, right? So it's like these things that are coming up and things that are dying. Like, you know, what are we collecting from the graveyard? What are we taking forward? What is precious about what we may have?
I actually thought they were standing stones, but anyway. But
Right, standing
also
stones.
on the card, Jen, above the griffin, is that kind of the snake symbol, the medical kind of symbol, the snake that goes up a.
Oh, the Ouroboros?
Yeah, I can't see it very well because of the glare. But either way, it just made me kind of chuckle because Hygeia has a very similar symbol to that, the asteroid, and she's activated in the full moon chart too. So interesting. Well, funnily enough, and Jen and I pulled these cards separately just before we came on air, but I pulled the 10 too. But I pulled the 10 of Wands, which is Saturn in Sagittarius, and it's called oppression. Now, before you all go, ugh, I want to say it's actually kind of, there's 8 kind of crossed wands in the background and 2 vertical wands going up and down, kind of pushing the other ones into the background. And then there's a lot of fire in the background as well. But I am actually just going to read from the fabulous Angeles Arian book that goes with the Thoth Tarot, because I can't say it better than she does. It's a fabulous interpretation. So she says the 10 of Wands is oppression. On this card, the 2 Tibetan dorjes, I don't know if that's how you say it, or the sacred spiritual power objects are dulled or grayed over to symbolize the state of oppressing oneself, either through holding back, editing, or rehearsing oneself, or not fully expressing oneself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or physically. The astrological aspect on this card is Saturn in Sagittarius. And Saturn is the planet of discipline and knowing one's limits and boundaries, as well as being able to set limits and boundaries. There may be a tendency to limit oneself or one's vision by overdoing the boundaries and turning them into blocks, basically. That's my little word of it, which is represented by the sun sign of Sagittarius, which is the fire in the background. In other words, you're blocking your own fire, you're oppressing your own fire. And Jupiter is actually involved in this full moon. So I am now going to just talk quickly about that chart before we dive into the details of it. So the full moon is in Pisces, as I said, and it's in opposition to Virgo. And the moon is at 21 degrees and 5 minutes of Pisces, conjunct Neptune at 17 degrees of Pisces. And on the opposite side, we have Virgo, the sun at 21 degrees and 5 minutes of Virgo. conjunct Mars at 17 degrees and 10 minutes of Virgo. So Mars and Neptune are in almost exact opposition, as the moon and sun are in exact opposition. We also have Venus and Mercury, both at the anaretic or last degree of Virgo. And shortly after the full moon, early on Saturday morning, no matter where you are, the moon will move into Aries and Venus and Mercury will move into Libra. Oh, time. The full moon takes place on in London time, Universal Time, September the 14th at 5:33 a.m. So Eastern Time, it will be 33 minutes after midnight. On the West Coast, it will be 10:33 p.m. on the 13th. So for most people in the world, it's on September the 14th. It's just anybody in Pacific, Mountain, or Central Time, or probably in Hawaii as well. It will be on the 13th. Also, this full moon is the opposition between Mars and Neptune forms a T-square to Jupiter in Sagittarius, and Jupiter and Neptune are approaching their third and final exact square of 2019, a week after this full moon. So this square is just being activated. It's being activated as we speak, as we record this, actually, by first Mercury, then Venus, then the Sun, and then finally Mars. All square this in what's called a mutable T-square. We also have a mutable T-square between Hygeia in Gemini, Juno in Virgo, and Ceres in Sagittarius, all at 9 degrees. And also, so there's a lot to talk about, the full moon at 21 degrees is in aspect to Pluto in Capricorn, which will be at almost 21 degrees still. He's at 20 degrees, 43 minutes retrograde of Capricorn on the full moon. So there's quite a lot of aspects to talk about. So Jen, do you want to dive in first with the numbers?
Yes, it's such an exciting moon in terms of energy. It feels very energetic and very fiery, and also kind of reestablishing or establishing, kind of like what the cards are saying. There's a reestablishment happening. So what is fascinating to me is the 21 degrees with the sun and moon, the opposition there. 21 is a very powerful number. 2 + 1 is 3. It first of all, it echoes the number of our year. We're in a 12 universal year, so it's the opposite. It's mirroring that, the 12 and the 21. So the 12 is about us individually kind of finding our individual strength and then taking the 1, 2, 3 steps to creativity, taking action, or what I'm calling creaction. Then the 21 has the 2 in front, which is about the community or the connection. Like, how are we connecting with what we say is our truth? We've had a very discordant connection, like, this is what I want, this is what I'm doing. And in many ways, yes, that makes sense. But then we've also been in victim mode about how other people are treating us around it. This 21 is about the truth, right? The truth will set us free, right? But first we need to express ourselves, express what we want in order to get to our truth, because there's so much buried. Like, if we say we want something, but it's incongruent because we're not expressing it. It's just like stuff, fire inside of us and water that is actually not being expressed, then we don't really know what we want, because we have to take action to know what we want. So that's fascinating. And also why that's additionally fascinating is we are in a 21 universal month. So it's a double 21, and it's a triple 3 that's happening. And the 3 is about creativity. It's about having that childlike joy to experiment and do things and approach everything with wonder and let the old stuff slip away, like the idea or the illusion of what we think is true. Right? Because we have a lot of things we have our opinions or ideas that aren't true. They're just a perception. They're not the truth, and it's probably not our truth. It's only a gown we're wearing, a mask. It's not real. So that I find very fascinating. The other things that are interesting about the day is it's 14. If we're looking at London, 14 is this number of the media, of expressing ourselves, saying what we need to say, getting our opinion out in public, like being heard. And that's a 5, which is about change. So we know there's going to be a lot of change happening. For those who are impacted on the 13th, it's also fascinating because, of course, the 13 is the divine feminine number. It is also a number of great change. So it's pretty fascinating. And I believe it's the final 13 for those who are impacted on the 13th, Friday the 13th, full moon for a while. I think that's a pretty rare thing. So yes, and then universally it's an 8-day. So we have some pretty intense energies. So from the 8, we are talking about change and the change we have to make. And then the 8-day is telling us we need to take action, like we need to do things to manifest. So I think we've talked a lot about that in terms of what's happening. And I'll address some of the other numbers just now.
Yeah, as Jen's talking, I'm kind of chuckling. And I have to say, though, first of all, this full moon is exactly square to my sun. My sun, that's 21 degrees Sagittarius in the 12th house that's ruled by Pisces. Oh, my God. And so I feel very tuned in when I look at this chart. I'm like, also, my personal life number is a 14. And it's anyway. But mutable signs, this is like so much mutable energy in this chart. So let's talk about that first. Jen said change is coming. Mutable is all about change, but it doesn't mean necessarily that the change is just going to happen. This is about changing your perceptions, changing how you think, changing how you work. The most radical change comes from within, of course, and it might be precipitated by some outward events because that Neptune Mars opposition conjunct the full moon is pretty gnarly because Mars and Neptune don't enjoy each other's company. Mars is drive and will and energy. It's your action planet wherever it is in your chart. And Neptune is completely the opposite. Neptune tends to drain the energy out of Mars, to be honest. So I think this full moon is going to be quite exhausting for a lot of people. If you can plan your life a little bit for next Friday night into Saturday, I wouldn't be planning anything too energetic or exciting, because I think you're going to just want to soak up the energies. You're going to feel a bit burned out, a bit drained, but that's because you're being asked to slow down. Okay. Mars in Virgo, we've had Mars in Virgo for a while, can be great drive and energy to get organized, get work done, get stuff done. It's been fabulous for me writing my latest book, but it's also very hypercritical and self-critical, and it's also tends to worry quite a lot. And with the confusion of Neptune in Pisces, Neptune in his ruling sign, there's going to be a lot of confusion. I think there's going to be a lot of confusion in the news. We've already seen, the build up to it in the UK with the quite stunning things that are happening with Brexit. Doesn't matter what side you're on. There's kind of unheard of kind of things happening there. I think there's going to be a lot more of that, but we're going to feel the energy trickling through into our own psyche, whether it's in our own personal lives or not. It feels unsettled. It's very chaotic. To talk a little bit more about the Virgo side, and then I'll let Jen come back in. But you know, on the new moon in Virgo on whenever it was, what date?
30,
the 1st or 30th of end of August. All the personal planets, including the moon, were all under the beams of the sun. Well, of course, the moon is now at the opposite point, but Mars, Venus, and Mercury are still within 10 degrees of the sun. They're still under the beams. We're still having this massive upgrade of our self, basically, who we are, you know, all the different parts of us, our mind, our values, our drive, and our ego are all being kind of just put under huge evolutionary stress, if you like. And then we've got the square to Jupiter, which I quickly want to mention, because Jupiter in his own sign is of Sagittarius, is now gaining speed. He turned direct and now he's moved forward 2 degrees. And Jupiter in Sagittarius is really about the law and new laws, but natural laws. It's the natural laws of the universe, like the laws of karma and the law of cause and effect. And there's a whole list of them if you want to look at them. We are really being asked where we're out of alignment with the natural law of the universe. And I think the aspect to Pluto in Capricorn, which is more man-made law, Capricorn, is and Pluto is undermining that, is saying, you know, throw out your attachment to the man-made laws and move more into alignment with the natural laws. So that's it for now. I'll come back, lots more to say.
Yes, it's kind of funny because it makes me think of the card that you pulled, the 10 of Wands, the idea of the constriction, which is the fake. It's the man-made laws that we have agreed to, like, oh, I need to behave a certain way to be accepted.
That doesn't count murder, by the way. Murder isn't a man-made law. Sorry.
Right. No, that's good you put that in there. I think man-made laws is in terms of how we behave in polite society. This isn't about just being bestial or doing whatever we want, because we do have to have boundaries around those things. And I think there's a whole discussion about that in terms of how we look at it. Having boundaries is healthy. We can't stop other people from doing things. However, the way we behave to each other creates a lot of the problems we're experiencing. You know, the honest truth is we tend to, even though it's good to have a sense of humor, we tend to mock people that are different to us. We tend to belittle them, and that just increases the rage that they have underneath. So it increases the opportunities for us to have to deal with difficult situations and create more of this negative karma. So I think that's really, you know, that's part of the natural law, is about loving each other and accepting that people do things. Like, people do what they do. The earth does what it does. We can't command it to do different things. But what we can do is go, this is my boundary around this thing. I don't know that the earth will listen to us, but other people may, you know. And this is it. We have lived in a world of false safety. So we've said, well, I've got the rules to hide behind, and I don't need to be who I am, and I'll be protected, or people need to do this, they need to behave in this way. And of course, that's all bullshit, because they don't need to. And the more we try to push them into these places, or they push us, the less honest we are, remembering that this moon and this month is about our truth and getting to the truth of the rules that we have lived by. Like, all of this vagueness, we've lived under all these rules where people have said, don't ask questions, right? It's like, you look at religion, or you look at science, or higher learning, which all of the stuff in Sagittarius, right? And then people going, the so-called leaders saying, don't ask questions. You're not allowed to ask questions. And why? Why can't you ask questions? Because we need to be curious, not angry curious, but passionate curious. So I think it's very interesting that the Mars and Neptune at 17 degrees. 17 is an 8, which I said it's an 8 days, so we know that's a double emphasis there. But also 17 is about leaving a legacy. So we know this moment is highly historical in a sense, because it's allowing us to change how we use our passion, like our aggression, because Mars is not just decision and passion, it's also aggression. Unspoken passion becomes aggression. You don't let me do what I want, I'm going to punish you, I'm going to make you do what I want. So with all of those personal signs, still feeling the impact of the sun, the light of the sun, and this cosmic energy that's coming in now, and a lot of people are feeling it, sore throats, weird feelings, feeling lightheaded, all of these things. It's because we're getting an upgrade, but it's also because we're being separated from this idea that something's going to happen to us if we don't follow the man-made rules, that we're not going to be safe. And so this to me is, it's like this box we've been living in, this container, is now being challenged by Neptune and challenged by the moon, and going, well, that's certainly one way you can live, but now we are in a time of changing legacy. I mean, think about the fact that we're moving from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age. We're moving from thousands of years of energy. And what I'm getting, and it's interesting, I wrote this little note down, so I'll share it. Let's see if I can find it, is this is a very karmic time. So this moon, I mean, this full moon is really setting the clock for when Saturn starts going forward, and the karma of all of the grief and emotion that we have not allowed ourselves to express or to feel because it wasn't accepted is all coming up to roost. So all of the things that we as a collective, as individuals, as our ancestors of thousands of years that have not been expressed are going, I want to collect my debt, right? You owe me. So it depends how we take it. We can take it in anger and say, I'm going to take my stuff from you, you owe me, and just, just continue the fight. Or we can go, how can we be heard and acknowledged and move away from this aggression? So it is a very interesting idea that's happening here. We are being offered two opposite choices. One is the choice where we say, I want something different. The other is, no, I want everything the same. So yeah, we go to the natural laws, and we go to these people that are doing all these crazy things that no one said they could do, which is incredibly exciting, but it is also, in a sense, it can be disturbing because these are things we have not experienced. And if we tell ourselves that that it's a fearful time, we will be less likely to be bold in what we're doing.
But I kind of want to talk a little bit about stages of consciousness, as according to Jeffrey Wolfgreen, who's kind of one of the founders, if you like, of evolutionary astrology. He talked about the herd state, which most people are in. I think there's going to be a lot of fear and aggression going around in what's called the herd state, and they are the people who won't be listening to this, basically. I hate the word herd, but in a way, but they're kind of just following the rules. They're doing their everyday life. They don't dream beyond. They don't want something bigger. I actually went to see Sting last Saturday night with the Utah Symphony at a most amazing show, a concert, that's the word I was looking for. And he was telling the story of when he was a little boy. He was born in a shipyard town, and back-to-back houses on terraced houses, real old British kind of scene, if you like, and all his family worked in the shipyards. And the royal family used to come and break the bottle on the ships to launch them. And one time he said the Queen Mother was coming, and the deceased Queen Mother, and he said there was this one moment as her car passed his house where he was standing, and he caught her eye, and she kind of looked directly into his eyes, And he said he was just drawn into this other world of, and it was nothing to do with her particularly, of wanting something more, wanting, a bigger life, wanting to expand and wanting to be connected more with spirit and whatever. It wasn't just about the money, it was definitely about this creative impulse. This story just really resonates when I look at this full moon, because Neptune in Pisces is the ruler of Pisces, and it's about the collective unconscious. It's about moving into this more creative liminal space, and that would be the next stages of consciousness, according to Jeffrey Wolf-Green. We're being kind of pulled into this higher consciousness again from this very Virgo earthly state. We're saying, it's nothing wrong with Virgo. It's of service. It's a fabulous sign. All signs are fabulous, but we're just really being kind of asked to embrace multiplicity and non-linearity and more uncertainty. I think on this full moon, we're being asked to move into this more. Did I say the word before? Liminal space. And kind of everything's been pointing me to that as I write my second book. I talk about this a lot in the second book, and it just kind of came to me. It didn't, it's not from my head, it's from somewhere else, because all that I've been doing has been speaking to that. And this full moon is very much about that. It's just, it's kind of magical, but I do kind of see that at the more mundane level, if in the herd state, if you like, there's going to be a lot of people running around like headless chickens on this full moon, and a lot of people are going to really struggle with it, and kind of fall away, if you like, as well. They're not kind of ready to move forward into it's just their life choice in this lifetime. It's their soul wasn't ready for that in this lifetime. So just be aware, though, that there's going to be a lot of this kind of headless chicken kind of energy, I think, on the full moon.
Yes. I'll just read what I wrote, because now I see it here. What came through this morning when I was thinking about this moon was, how agile are you? This moon is about awakening yourself from the illusion of being a victim of circumstance. The truth will set you free, but first you must express what you desire. Own your desire, own your resistance. And I think that's really, because the truth is, any one of us has, at every moment, is given an opportunity to shift our consciousness. We are constantly being offered these opportunities, and we can go yes or no. However, if we want to thrive and kind of get into the flow of the universal law, then we have to embrace this unknown. We have to step into it. Otherwise, we're going to be floundering. And with this idea, with all this emotion that's going to be arising, all this, that for many of us is anger, because that's really the only emotion we've been allowed for so long. Anger is undigested emotion that is about feeling unloved, unneeded, not enough, whatever our story is, and we all have stories around it. So with that comes that idea that I want my fair share. And the truth is, no one is going to give it to us, but we might fight like crazy to insist that they do. And that's what's going to create a lot of this confusion, death. And as Lou says, and I agree, this remembering one of the key things about Virgo is disease. Showing that
Pisces.
Right, Pisces too, disease of the mind, disease of relying on drugs or illusion, something that's going to help us maintain our illusion. So we will fight to maintain our illusion.
And viruses, piracies.
Right.
Yeah.
Parasites, all of these things that have kept us asleep. And so there is all of this. So I think that a lot of people will decide to leave the planet in the next 20 years or so, and a lot probably coming up pretty quickly, in terms of it's just too heavy. Like the energy on the planet is getting lighter, and people who are very dense are not comfortable here, right? So that's really fascinating. And I think too, if we look at Mercury and Venus, because what I'm thinking about, and I know we've talked about this before, the terms of Venus, Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. Right?
Mm.
So it is about communication in a sense, if you think about it. The communication with our physical body in this physical world. How are we adapting? Which is why we have systems, which connects us to Saturn, right? We have systems so we can adapt to a changing world. We don't know what's happening, but we can prepare and get ourselves in good shape. We can be eat better, have better regimes, so we can, in terms of, when I say regime, I don't mean somebody controlling us. I mean in terms of how we eat and how we live. Like, for myself, I'm doing a lot more meditation and different things just to strengthen my core, which is really helping me. And I think this is the Virgo lesson to us, is what are we establishing in the real world? So when all this stuff comes at us, we're in a better shape to deal with it, to deal with the problems, the issues, angry people, etc. The other thing that I find fascinating is that because we have the royal star now, or the kingmaker, now the queenmaker in Virgo, Regulus. This is the rising of the female energy, which is about balancing the male and female, which of course we again see with these paired situations. The Mercury and Venus are 29 degrees. That degree is the, what do they call it besides the anuretic? It's a critical degree. So we know this is a highly expanded energy. It's that out of bounds place. And for me, if I think about the 29, it's the place we have to go when we may not want to go, where we have to deal with things that are beyond our comprehension as humans. Like, it's beyond our minds. It's beyond our, what will happen. And there's Mercury and Venus, those two aspects of creative or destructive energies of gathering new communication from the other side of the world, or other world, right?
And it's about values with Venus as well, your core values, that is, and what really matters to you. And the Virgo is very much about, I think, meaningfulness too. So it's what's really meaningful in your life. Oh, there's so much going on in this full moon. I had another thought for that anoretic degree, and I can't. Oh, it was about the mutable signs as well. Just another kind of, because there's so much mutable energy in this full moon. Is mutable signs are kind of preparing you for the next stage. Okay, that's, if we look at the chart as quadrants, we have cardinal sign, fixed sign, then mutable. Then it starts again, cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And each stage of the signs is taking you into another layer of life. And that applies at a natal chart level, and it applies at this level that we're talking about. There's so much change coming on this full moon. It's like, we have a Pisces full moon every year, but they're not always this close to Neptune. They're not always square to Jupiter. They're not always got all the personal planets conjunct the sun in Virgo. It's like,
right.
Oh, and one other thing though about this T square that we've got going on to Jupiter in Sagittarius. One other way to look at it is to look at what's called the empty leg of that T square, which would make it into a grand square or grand cross, and that would be around about 17 to 21 degrees of Gemini, which is the other Mercury ruled sign. So there's a lot to do with information coming in. I would suggest really paying attention to signs and symbolism and synchronicities that come your way leading up to this full moon, because I think there's going to be a lot of information coming at you from everywhere, from spirit, from the news, from world, from what you read, from pebble on the ground, that's going to inform where you need to move forward with these massive changes.
Right. And you know what's so fascinating here is this, well, of course, Jupiter expands what it touches. So
Mhm.
there's that expansion of our spiritual
Mm,
recognition and an expansion of our passion. I feel like, you know, with this idea of Mars being kind of helpless in a sense, right?
mhm,
You know, because of having all this energy coming at it from Neptune, there is this opportunity to create new growth, like new birth, right? Which is also, you know, the Virgoan aspect of the earthy being different in how you express yourself, or what, you know, because your desires are cleaner, uh,
mm,
and not filled with anger and anguish and all of these things.
mm,
Because definitely I feel like, and I think we've addressed this, but just the fact that because Neptune and the moon are so prominent together with that, and I know we've had some of that before, these opportunities to release trauma, to release old thinking about our pain and our victimhood and all of that, uh, which can be very confusing, but
mm,
it is helping us come to a clearer place. Like, oh, this is what I really want. I want to move away from that, those old stories. I want to be clean and clear and drop the baggage and move forward, like take different action. And that's what it feels like to me, is like the stripping down of
mm,
the old way of us, and kind of expanding into this wondrous space that we don't really know about. And
mhm,
we can go off into delusion, or we can stay with the eight, which is about manifesting our leadership qualities. It's about what we want to bring forward, which is so powerful.
mm.
Um, we should also talk about the three nines. The
I was just going to say that we should talk about that. Yeah. So Hygeia, 9 degrees Gemini. Juno, 9 degrees Virgo, and Ceres at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. You know, they are, well, Ceres is officially a dwarf planet now, but they're all asteroid goddesses, basically. Hygeia is to do with health and hygiene, and that brings us back to, you know, the dis-ease thing, because it's not just about, you know, I think there might be a few. In fact, my own husband had a stomach thing yesterday. You know, he was quite poorly yesterday. Luckily he's back at work today. But I think there's going to be a lot of that kind of energy going around. A lot of viruses, a lot of kind of mysterious kind of thing. And there's kind of a message in that for us too. You know, it's up to you to look for your own kind of message from that, if that happens around you or to you. And then Juno, she represents the rights of the abused, if you like. You know, abused women, abused children. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something more coming up about paedophilia. You know, we've had quite a lot in the news with Jeffrey Epstein, and Prince Andrew is still kind of under stress about that over in the UK. And Virgo is about making whole. So I think there's going to be something coming up around that as well. And Ceres is the great mother. She rules the seasons, but she also is about grief and forgiveness. And in Sagittarius, you know, that's the bigger vision and truth. So where do we need to allow ourselves to feel some grief, perhaps, but also to finally kind of forgive in some area? I think that's going to be a bit of a theme. It's pretty immense, this full moon, to be honest.
It is. I mean, it's overwhelming in many
It is.
sense, because we've been preparing, but of course you know, as much as we could prepare.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like there is no more time to prepare. And the idea, the kind of picture that comes in my mind is the in the Bible, the story of the when the Jews, the Israelites, were leaving Egypt, and they had just a very short amount of time. So they, you know, they made the bread that was unleavened, and they just had to leave. And it's kind of like that. I feel this is very Virgoan in a sense. In this chart is, you can't prepare until you're on the way, until things are happening. It's like we don't know what to prepare for. So it's like, okay, now I know what I'm doing. And so trusting that confidence of, your creative mind, your ability to deal with disaster. Like we are all, really good copers with all these things, because that's what
Mhm.
we do when we're faced with disaster. And it feels like there's going to be a lot of water and fire. Lou and I talked about water and fire events coming up. So whether they're fiery and watery, and remembering these two are destructive and healing at the same time, um, whether it's an emotional thing, which is to do with the sexual part of all these people that have been abused, that are getting their retribution of some kind. And and when I say retribution, it's in terms of being made whole. So being released from that agreement, like, oh, I'm suffering, I'm going to suffer forever because no one's hearing me, but to feel heard and to feel swept into love, and a place of, yes, you have value. And when I think about these three female energies at nine, nine is the number of universal compassion. It's the number of coming together, of gaining wisdom, like the wisdom of going, I know why I suffered, and I'm ready to let go of that. I feel heard, and now I can move forward with that. This idea of hygiene with the health and our mental health, when we think about it in terms of all the ways we've suffered because we've held on to for good reason, we've held on to this baggage, and now all the water and the fire is burning and kind of pushing all the stuff away from us, making room. Like I feel like this is it. They're making room. Jupiter and all of these things are making room for us to travel in this tunnel of safety with the protection of these energies. Like, yes, follow us, we're going to, but of course that's energetic. So you have to do things to do that. But,
and it's all changing our perceptions, of course, too, which is very, the hurricane, we've seen Dorian, and we've never seen a hurricane like that. The Bahamas are basically wiped out completely, but look how slow it's moved. Dorian has been with us for days and days and days and days. And normally, we get a bit of a build-up, it whooshes through and then peters out. Yes, causing immense damage, but this one is staying there. And that's very Virgo, very like I'm kind of staying in this organized structure. And then we had that awful boat fire as well off California, so fire on the water. I do think there's probably going to be some more of these kind of events, but they're, again, like Jen said, they're kind of symbol, it's as without, so within. It's kind of symbolizing what's occurring within us, and we're being, we're having to change how we feel and what we want to heal and how we want to move forward. I was watching the climate town hall last night because I'm very interested in green things. And I'm not going to talk about which candidate it was, but because I don't want to get into that. But, there was talk of just FEMA will only rebuild where the original property was. And things are changing. The whole climate's changing. Everything's changing. And we've got to think about how we can heal. And this one candidate was saying he would introduce a rule saying that they would have to build on higher ground to get the FEMA money. It's just about changing these ways, so that we can live differently. And instead of rebuilding the old structure by the old rules where it was, move it.
Exactly. And it's interesting, that phrase, higher ground, right? Like we build on higher ground. That means we go closer to the natural rules and laws, and we are more honest and true with each other and more vulnerable about how we feel. We express how we feel at the time, so we don't have to build up anger and resentment and then get stab people in the back, right? We change that. But also this idea of trying to repair a system that's completely broken is a complete waste of time. We've got to move away from that. The other thing I feel that's happening is we got to make decisions on our feet right now. We don't have time. Like this whole thing, it's just staying with us. So it's like we can't say, well, okay, I'll think about it tomorrow. It's like, no, you got to make your decision.
You're not learning, so
Yes. Yes, so it's like, yes, there's a lot of room from compassion and feelings and action. So it's all of this. We're having that Martian aspect of needing to be decisive and coherent, like really being in our true masculine. That is not about pushing people over, but more about how do we make this work for all of us.
Mm.
And that, how do we let the spirituality that's coming in influence us in a good way and not make us run away and hide? So all of this is immediate, it's around us, we can't get away from it.
Yeah.
And that's really what I feel is so important. There's the sacred energy that is with us no matter what we choose. However, we have to make choices. Like the universe does not choose for us. It
Mhm.
gives us opportunities and experiences, and we're going to have to decide how we're going to take the experience. So,
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about how you respond and react to it, to everything.
right.
I kind of had to laugh this morning. I saw somebody saying that, and she'll know if she's listening, that, and it was about the title of my book, about this modern astrology thing of how you harness the stars as if you can control them. That's not what we're saying. It's about how you respond and react is the modern way, is not, things happen and they may happen according to fate or whatever, but how you respond to it is up to you. So.
Right. And you know what's interesting, and I want to talk a little bit about the 227s as well,
Mm.
because we have the nines and 27 is also nines, and we have Vesta and Sedna, and I just want to talk about that. But to respond to what you're saying, yes, this is the thing is when you have, like in your numerology or in your astrology or even your soul record in the Akashic, there is the promise of your destiny.
Mhm.
It's not guaranteed. It's just you've put things in place to have the optimum experience. But the optimum experience only comes if you take those uh, crazy opportunities. Like you have to be courageous. That's the thing about Mars is we look at people who do some things that we say crazy and we think like, how do they do it? And that's because they're not crazy. They're brave. They're courageous. They're like, I have an idea and I'm going to do it. I need to change the world. We're not going to change the world by talking about it. We actually have to go out and do what other people think are crazy. So yeah, and for me, like when I'm in the records and then I'll say, sometimes I'll say, should I do this? Like I'll ask my Akashic beings. And they're like, we don't know, do it if you want to, right? Like, is it in my highest good to do that? Then they'll say yes or no. But should I do it? Well, no, I'm free will, right? This is it. We have free will. So we get to go, we got to stop relying on other people to tell us what we're supposed to do. We have to get out of that habit.
Yeah.
All right. So
You
let's
want
talk
to
about
talk about the 27?
right, 27, because that's a 9. And if we take those 3 nines we talked about, that's also 27. And 27 is the highest energy of 9 in terms of what we typically talk about, because we don't go beyond 31 with days and degrees, etc. So it's a very, very powerful number because it is about not only the insight that we have to connect to our wisdom, because the 7 and 9 are both about wisdom, but it's also about the duality, or accepting the duality of who we are, the duality of our universe, the idea of setting boundaries, or working with the duality of our system with compassion, with taking action, with passion, like knowing who we are, expressing who we are and going, right, this is what I need, this is what I desire, this is what I'm going to do, who's going to meet me, who's with me, how do we do this together? So that's very powerful. And when you think about Vesta, who is the, Vestal Virgin, again, we come back to the Virgo energy, is about keeping the flame alive. And that's what we're doing. We're keeping the flame of our spirit alive. And Sedna is really, I know there's lots of different legends about her, but she did not take responsibility for herself.
Yeah.
She chose a man who was in the illusion of a man who would fit what she wanted. Let's take care of me, make everything luxurious, and then landed up in a shitty nest, like going, this sucks. And so what did she do? She called her dad to come save her instead of going, okay, I got myself into this problem. Now I need to make the best of it. So called somebody, and then her dad had to cut off her fingers because he needed to get home to save, take care of the rest of his family. And she was in the ocean. So she lives in the ocean. So there she is in the ocean. And I think when you think about water, it's about understanding that our choices do impact the greater world. Like in the ocean, everything is the same. And so when you make a movement, the water moves with you. It, breaks down things, it decomposes, it grows things. It really is the essence of who we are. We are, 67% water.
And interestingly, Sedna is thought by many astrologers, and she's so new that we're still kind of discovering her astrological meaning, which is, of course, is informed by the myth, but moves beyond that generally, is currently kind of the outer levels of our possible consciousness. Currently, I say. Because we're constantly expanding our consciousness, and I talked about levels of consciousness earlier, and I wanted to actually, because this will hark back to some of the stuff we've talked about already, which is interesting. Alan Clay has done a lot of work about it on Sedna. He's written a huge book on Sedna, and but anyway, on his website, he talks about the unconscious level for Sedna, on the spiritual path level, and the spiritually evolved level. And I'm not going to read them all, but at the unconscious level, Sedna is victimization, persistent illness, resentment, all those kind of things we've talked about throughout this call. On the spiritual path, Sedna is radical acceptance, acknowledging how bad things really are, and starting from there, like what we've talked about as well. At the spiritually evolved level, it's really reaching this point of spiritual destiny and transcendent peace. Okay, so that's what's possible from Sedna, and Vesta is focus and commitment astrologically. So we've got that very concentrated energy, and of course, it is in Taurus, which is Venus ruled, and really, I always think of as really the Earth. Taurus is the most earthly. It's the sign that represents all our senses, so everything we can touch, like the nature, the chair you sit on, your body, all that kind of stuff. So I find it interesting that that's asking us to really move into this radical acceptance of our earthly existence and what we're going to do with it. So anyway.
Right, and that's so fascinating, because I was just thinking, it's just so perfect. I was just thinking about Vesta in terms of keeping the fires burning, right? The fires of our establishment. In the case, like, she was positioned by Rome to keep the fires burning so they could do whatever they wanted. And in the end, it became Rome is burning, right? So she turned away from the duty that she had agreed to uphold to, because of the moving away from natural law, right? So at some point there was that idea that if you want the fire, it's all over the place, right? And now you're going to have to
ask for it. So.
Right. Like, it's how you use your passion, right? It's like when everything's out of control, then everything's burning.
So there's so overwhelming, this full moon. I really, we're going to dive into the symbols, I think, and then wrap up. But I just would like to invite all of you to, we've got a week till this full moon, well, just over a week from recording this. I would really kind of ask you to take heed of some of our words about taking care of yourself, eating well, sleeping well, just those good habits, so that you are able to deal with the kind of immensity of this full moon, and probably do some kind of spiritual practice in the mornings, whether it's morning pages writing or meditation or prayer, whatever, just shore yourself up, I think, because it's kind of pretty
It's very intense. And I'm just thinking as you're talking, the 21, which is the 3, with all the 3s and the 9s, that's highly emotional, evocative energies. Plus, it's a full moon, so there's more emotion. There
Yeah.
is going to be so much emotion. We're just talking about the water emotion, which is our tears and grief, and then the fire emotion, which is all our passion that's being suppressed. So all of this out there, we're going to have a lot of emotion in our bodies and feel things, physical things in our body, as well as emotions that we may want to be angry or feel suppressed. So we've got to be in a safe place to do that. Find a place to express your emotion.
Yeah.
You know, something that's really fantastic, I'll just mention, is when you do experience trauma or you remember a trauma from your past, something that's incredibly healing is shaking, like a dog does. You know, when you have a terrible experience, you might have remembered shaking, your body shaking.
That reminds me of that Miley Cyrus song. Shake it off. Was it Miley Cyrus? Somebody. Anyway.
That's something to do. Shake your body. And a lot of spiritual practices, Qigong, I don't know, Quora, different ones that actually have
shaking. Yeah.
Right.
And even Quakers, they quake. And I do think that's a reason for it. So
Probably.
Anyway, I'm going to read my symbol first.
Yes, go ahead.
So the Chandra symbol for Pisces 22 is a blacksmith creating an ornate garden gate. Hard substance is impossibly tough if you fall into letting it be that, but is the perfect basis if you are willing to make it so. All the resistances, crystallizations, dysfunction, and foundational dissonances are great excuses to stop or immense occasions to start. You get laid low if you do not know what to do with the stuff of this world. But if you have learned the subtle craft of world making, you're best off meeting up against the hardest places and discovering how to turn them around or turn them completely around. The exceedingly demanding guild of those who dig into the depths and draw forth beauty and infinite power from the brutal and heavy realities which otherwise seem impenetrable. A stubbornly hard-working, impossible to discourage craft of reworking the primal soil, mostly unproductively, mostly learning how forever, paying your dues, never quite getting it right until there comes a day when even the obdurate bends to the inner design, when the conviction is complete.
Wow.
So that was pretty dense again. They always are, but it's just saying about you choose how you deal with this overwhelm and how we move forward, building, turning, making lead into gold, if you like. So,
right. Alchemy.
Yeah.
This is all about alchemy, right? Learning how to shift whatever it is into what you desire, as opposed to feeling stuck and saying there's nothing I can do, right?
Yeah.
I'm a victim of my circumstance, the opposite. So very powerful, beautiful. And it's so funny. I don't know if you can hear, but there's all these trucks as you're talking.
I did hear.
Carrying on. I'm like, wow, talk about earthly messages, right? We've got these physical metal trucks carrying on outside.
Oh, I didn't know whether it was real or if it was on the line, but
I was like, okay. Well, I can't stop that noise, so I'll mention it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read the Sabian symbol, the Pisces 22. A man bringing down the new law from Sinai. This is a symbol of the eternal authority implicit in the very fact of man's ideals or woman's ideals, and of a spiritualization of experience through the religious insights of human society and the institutions it has created for the common welfare. The inspired prophets of each age have been custodians of an enduring morality, and this has its embodiment in the mountaintop aspirations of even the least of individuals. Right is dramatized at a personal responsibility for the course of events. The key word is mandate. When positive, the degree is self-sacrifice and a determination to further the ultimate upliftment of all people. And when negative, self-exploitation and impenetrable egotism.
There's that choice again. And I love, I think that was Linda Hill's book, right? Yeah.
No, Edmund Jones.
Oh, Edmund Jones. Okay. Well, Dane Rudyard, I do like his keynote, so I'm just going to kind of read that as well, if that's all right. Edmund Jones and Rudyard both interpreted the symbols. So he put the need to bring down to the level of everyday existence the clear realizations made manifest in a great peak experience. So that's kind of what this full moon is, really. It's a bit of a peak experience going on. Maybe I'm going, whoa, it's a peak experience because it's squaring my 12th house sun. I don't know, but I'm feeling like I'm, whoa.
It's definitely a peak experience for all of us. And one of the things we have to remember is that when we are experiencing a peak experience or the lowest degree, like we're entering the lowest energy that we know, is that's the beginning of the change. But we don't know it because we're engrossed in how awful it is. But that really is where our changing, the new beginning begins, right?
Yes. So buckle up, buttercups.
Yes, sense of humor. And I think too, what strikes me, and if I think about this card that came up, it really is taking the big view, like a higher view of what there is. Like you're looking at the broader view, so you can go, right, this is a mess, and what's next, as opposed to, I'm so stuck in here, I can't see.
And that's very Jupiter in Sagittarius too, kind of the flying above and seeing the bigger picture. So try and do that. All right, Jen, where can people find you?
You can find me at my website, jenduchenne.com. I'm also, they can Google me. I'm pretty much everywhere. Instagram, on Facebook. I have a group and a page, and I'm pretty active. Well, I haven't been, but I will be again. And my cards, the Illuminating Journey cards, are for sale on my website, jenduchenne.com/illuminating journey cards. Yep.
Well, again, just Google my name. My website's louiseeddington.com. I have a membership site which works a little like Patreon to support my work, but you get rewards for. You can find that on my website. I wrote the book Modern Astrology, and that's available through my website as well. If you have the book and have not yet reviewed it on Amazon, please leave me a review, so that when my new book's out, people go, wow, her other book got loads of reviews. And I also have a great Facebook group called the Planetary Magic Cafe, which is fun and pretty active. So come join us in the group. It's a free group, of course. So we do various fun things. Thinking of starting another 30-day challenge at some point. The last one was lots of fun. So yeah, but otherwise, yeah, just Google my name. I'm on Instagram as well and Twitter, but Twitter's more my political space. All right then. So for now, it's goodbye from Lou.
And goodbye from Jen.